actually happens inside the body when we train, restrict, dehydrate, and push past our limits?
The human body is a survival machine. I guess there's reasons why there's stories of religious figures going out in the desert for 40 days and fasting, and you see that across all these religions. We are survival machines. The way your body uses fuel sources changes. And so what you're doing when you're cutting weight for a fight, your body literally thinks, I'm dying. There's limited resources. I need to slow the rate of that process until I can get more resources.
So how do you manage all of that when you're depleted? How can you think clearly? How can you feel clearly? How can you navigate life?
They sit in what we call this extreme physiological zone, and no one really wants to touch it because it's quite dangerous.
I don't know if you want to comment on it, but the protocols that they put in place in terms of like hydration, the massive drastic weight cuts, like that's not enough at this point, is it?
I mean, it's...
What actually happens inside the body when we train, restrict, dehydrate, and push past our limits? And why are fighters still risking their health for practices that should have died years ago? Today, I'm joined by Jordan Sullivan, aka the Fight Dietitian. He's worked across 19 UFC world titles and is one of the game changers in the industry that's willing to call out the old norms and explain the science behind what really keeps fighters performing and staying healthy before, during, and after a fight. We talk about everyday fueling, stress, the supplement stack that every fighter should be taking, hydration, the nervous system, and yes, the real dangers behind extreme cutting and why the culture needs to shift. And where. It's sharp, honest, incredibly educational, and will hopefully give you a clearer lens on how you approach food and how you fuel your body. This is Jordan Sullivan, and this is the VRSS podcast. We start off each episode with a signature question. When our listeners finish listening to this episode, what is one thing that you hope they'll take away or see differently about the fight, whether that's in life or in the ring?
Good question. Do I have to answer it now? Can I answer it at the end of the question?
Yeah, you know what?
Maybe at the end of the episode.
You know what I realized? I usually send this question to people in advance, and I was like, I didn't send you this question in advance. So we can come back to that.
Yeah, give me the episode and I'll give you a good answer.
Okay, all right, perfect. Let's just, all right. So when you're taking on new clients, right, or you're learning about their everyday training or their goals, is there an area that you first focus on?
When we're taking new clients on?
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends where they're at, I guess. A lot of our work with the fighters, they're coming in usually because they've had a bad or negative experience with a weight cut, right? So I guess there's two kind of schools of people we'll get on where it's preemptive. Maybe they've watched our social media and they go, and they're new and they go, you know what, I don't want the bad things to happen, so I'm going to jump on that beforehand. That's ideally, that's how we get our clients on. But a lot of the time it's because they've had a bad experience. And I think anyone who's been in combat sports and anyone who's tried to make weight, it's tough. Yeah. Like it's difficult. When I started out, just prior to starting the Fight Dietitian, like I was competing very heavily. I was living in Toronto and I had a master's degree. So I had 2 degrees in nutrition, right? And I'm in the gym and I'm going, I don't even know how to do this. My teammates are asking me what to do, and they're going, "Oh, this guy, he's got 2 fancy white pieces of paper."
Yeah, you're the subject matter expert.
I'm meant to be the guy, and I'm sitting there going, "I don't really know what to tell you," because we never learnt it back then. We never learnt it, and there wasn't a lot of good information. Okay. And you know, like you've trained, a lot of that information is just passed down generationally, right? Like when I started boxing when I was 12. If my coach said, hold some water in your mouth and run around the block and breathe through your nose, that's what everyone did. That's what you do. You don't question coach. So if they say, don't eat carbohydrates, just eat protein and fat, and that's how you lose the weight and get on in your sweatsuit and run, that's what you do. Right. And so we never learnt any different. And then when we went through the academic route, we never learnt. So I guess that's why a lot of people will have these negative experiences. Okay. So the first thing we come through, we want to decode that. We want to go, okay, well, fundamentally, there is a system. We have a pretty decent system, I would say, for making weight. First thing you got to get through is those beliefs, right? A lot of people will come in and go, oh, I can't eat carbohydrates. Coach has told me this. The senior guys at the gym, they don't eat carbohydrates. Yeah. So how do you break through that? Right. And that's really the first big challenge when you've got someone to come on board. Okay. And we can talk about all the assessment and all the science, and that's like, I guess, all the numbers, and that's all the theory and practice. But really, that's the first thing you're trying to break through is that psychological bit of why are they even having a bad weight cut in the first place. Right,
especially in a world that is so steeped in tradition, right? So how much pushback do you get from the gyms, from the athletes now that are really, again, still in this old school world of of how much output there is and maybe not as much input or fueling, for example, right? Is there a lot of pushback, especially maybe I would say in like a sport like Muay Thai?
Yeah, it's funny because it depends which region of the world you're in. So I guess in Australia and New Zealand, and I guess that was our goal, right? We wanted to change weight cutting. We wanted to impact every single gym in Australia and New Zealand. We wanted all of them not just to know who we were so they come buy programs or whatever. We wanted them to know who we were so we could have a positive impact on how they go about the process. Right. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that over the last 7 years. And I think in the Australia-New Zealand scene, we're probably some of the best weight cutters in all of combat sports. Yeah. And when you travel, if you go to the US, if you go internationally, if you go down to Brazil, if you Russia, whatever, there's still some pretty crazy practices that happen. Like even this week, I was on call with a Brazilian athlete, pretty high-level athlete, mixed martial artist, top organization. Still, I'm getting this pushback. I'm running through numbers and I'm going, he's coming and he's saying to me, I have no energy during camp. These last 2 weight cuts were extremely tough. Okay. And I'm going, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm looking at your numbers and I'm going, and when you break it down and the same problems come up, I cut carbohydrates early because I was freaking out. I did a water taper, all these things we know you shouldn't be doing. Right. And he probably knows he shouldn't be doing it, but it's just so ingrained. And so even still, like we've been doing this for close to 10 years and we've done this with the best athletes of our generation. Yes. We've got all the evidence that it works. Yet we still get this pushback. Yes. And so it's a bigger problem, right? It's that bigger cultural problem where I can come in and go, like I can tell you exactly what to do. I can tell you every gram to eat. I can tell you the best way to make weight for your body. But there's still going to be that cultural resistance. And that largely comes, I think, from the coaches and the senior fighters.
Yes. So how do you crack it?
Yeah, I mean, the best example I have, say City Kickboxing is the gym I've worked with for probably 7-8 years now. They have a really good system. And I guess it was tough. Like when I came in, they knew there was a problem, but Eugene and the rest of the coaching staff had the sense of mind to go, okay, look, this not only is a big problem in the gym, but there's a huge advantage to be had if we get this right. And it's still like there was a lot of pushback when we started working with, say, Dan Hooker, Israel Adesanya, Kai Kara France, like Brad Riddell, all these guys that were coming up at the time. There was that resistance to it where, this is the biggest moment of my life. I've worked 10 years, 15 years to get here. And now this guy's coming in and saying, kind of flip the script on how we make weight, eat a different diet, put all our trust in this guy.
It's scary.
It's scary. It's absolutely. And it's like a lot of responsibility. And I guess once you just show them time and time again how it works, and then, the best way I think that you get recognition for it is they need to get the results. And whether or not the weight cut plays and performance in MMA, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, whatever it is, lots of different components. How much does the nutrition and the weight cut play into that? Questionable. But we were lucky, right? We went through one of the most successful runs in the UFC. Between Volkanovski, Adesanya, they had some of the longest reigns as UFC champions in UFC history. And we were working with them, getting this data, putting this information out there. And so that built a lot of credibility. So when these guys are going into freestyle MMA, City Kickboxing, they're seeing these guys, they're seeing them winning at the top level. They're seeing them come back into the gym the week after their fight, take a couple of weeks off and go, you know what, I'm going to do another fight camp because my body's good. And they're cranking out 2, 3, 4 fights a year because they've got this process down pat. And that's really, ultimately, that's the evidence you need. Because I can come in and do as many seminars as you want.
Yeah. But until you see somebody that is, that has the energy and has recovered quickly because they're fueling properly, right? And like you said, doing 3-4 fights a year. Oh my God, that's just this is exhausting just even thinking about that. That's the data. That's a proof that a lot of people would need, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's what worked for us, right? That's why City Kickboxing has such a good program now. Like, I think they've had one miss weight in the UFC. So one athlete has missed weight, and it was a bit of a strange case, and he was a bit of a rogue athlete anyway. But other than that, perfect record. And even the junior athletes that are coming through now that are now making their UFC debuts, like I don't even have to be that hands-on with them because they've seen the process, they've learnt about it, they studied it. There's other guys in the gym that are interested in nutrition that can help them out. And so now you've got this whole generation of people where the focus is like, well, I know I need to perform to become a UFC champ. This is just part of that process. I get the nutrition down pat. I don't do these big weight cuts. I don't do anything crazy. But the goal, I want to be a UFC champ. This is just part of the package. Exactly. So like in the space of 7-8 years, we've been able to go in and change the culture of that gym where it's not this old school, like it's an afterthought, I've got to make weight, or there's this focus of I need to suffer, I need to hurt during this. It's all about, I want to be a UFC champion. What's the process to be able to do that?
What a legacy to leave, right? Especially as you're, maybe getting a little bit more hands off, but then there's always going to be something that you need to educate, right? And that more education that you need to pass on, right? Okay, so if I could bring it back, Jordan, because a lot of our listeners, I would say, are more like the everyday athletes or weekend warriors. There's not as many that are maybe heading for the UFC or hoping for that contract. However, obviously their training and the craft and the art and the sport is very important to them. Is fueling for everyday training or being an everyday athlete, how different is that from being a pro?
Depends what their goal is and what their lifestyle's like. Like if you're a pro athlete, your body is your tool, right? So I say to those guys, you have no excuse. You have no excuse not to get every meal right, not to get your sleep right, not to have a stress management coach, not to have everything dialed in. Right. Because this is your full-time job. Yes. Imagine you just said, oh, you know what? Out of my 40-hour work week, I'm going to work 10 hours. Yeah. It doesn't work like that. That's not how the real world works. Yeah. So if you're a full-time athlete, part and parcel, you have to do it. When we have everyday athletes, I almost think that's more impressive when I work with these guys because, yes, these guys come in, they probably train 1 to 2 times a week. Yeah. They're probably competitive and they're balancing not only a full-time job, but they've probably got personal relationships, other things going on in their life, and they're balancing all of that. Sometimes they're doing not that much less training than the professional athlete. So I guess when you're looking at fueling these guys over here, the everyday person, it's, okay, we need to make sure that you're fueled for training, but you've got to turn up to your job at 9 a.m. after the 2-hour jiu-jitsu class at 6:30. And then you come back at 6 p.m. to do the Muay Thai class. And then you've got to go to bed and you're all ramped up and you've got to get to sleep. You've got to get some fuel in and you've got to go to the next morning class. And then you've got a big presentation that you need to work on. So there's a lot more to consider. So I guess that is almost more of a complex puzzle than what the professional guys are because it's quite straightforward, these guys. You look at their training schedule, they've got the luxury of having all these coaches. There's a whole team of us. They can go home and rest in between. Yeah, there's not as many variables, right? With them, everything's pretty much like locked in. Well, we would hope, or they would hope. But yeah, your everyday athlete, lots more variables, a lot of things to consider. There's birthday parties, there's, your kids, whatever that you need to go to, right? So do you often see that these everyday athletes, are they more like underfueling or overfueling, or is there a pattern there? It can depend. I guess our work, again, 2 types of people we'll probably see in those 2 camps. We'll get someone come in and they'll go, I've got all this stuff going on. I'm training twice a day. I've got this office job that I have to go to, or I work on a job site. And I'm still trying to balance everything. I've still got to show up for my family, for work, my friends. I've still got to be social and do all of that. And then because either as a function of their busy lifestyle, a lack of education or whatever it is, they just are not getting enough fuel to be able to do that. And that's when they're presenting and going, I've got no energy levels, my sleep's terrible, like I'm feeling terrible at the back end of training, like I can get through. And I guess that's where the focus becomes. And that's pretty common, that underfueling piece. And I don't think people appreciate, like, even if you turn up to your office job and you're sitting down thinking at a chair, that's using a lot of energy. It's true. And you having to show up and do a presentation and be this person, that takes a lot of energy as well. Compound on top of that, you're doing jiu-jitsu in the morning, Muay Thai at night, it's a lot of energy. You're probably burning close to what these professional guys are doing anyway, but these guys don't view themselves as professional athletes. And they go, well, what do I do then? You go, simply, you need to fuel properly. You need to think about what you're doing like you're one of these guys over here. And that's a big problem we see is they're just underfueling. And it's just getting them. And a lot of them, they do that because they go, again, coming back to the culture of I'm a fighter, it's meant to suck. It's the whole Rocky. Like I loved Rocky when I was growing up. I should be getting up and running in the sweats and just having 2 raw eggs and that's it, and battling through. And that's part of being a fighter. But then it's a different kettle of fish when you're balancing everything and you have to fuel that. It's not just fueling your training, you've got to fuel your life. And then I guess the mentality with fighters is less is more. When that's not the case, it's more is more. And it's like especially for these guys, you probably don't have to do these crazy big weight cuts. You probably don't have to manage your weight and be 8 to 10 to 12% body fat. It's not advantageous for you. So you should be fueling, like your goal should be optimal fueling for your training, for your recovery, for your work, and to show up for your family. Like that should be your goal. And when we go through that process with them, they all go, oh, I'm under eating. And then they eat more and then they go, oh, I feel so much better. I feel so much better at training. Like I actually can do this. I can rock up at night. I felt great during the work. I'm not getting the 3 p.m. crash. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
You go, yeah, it's because you're an athlete, don't get me wrong, but you're a different type of athlete. You're like the everyday professional athlete. And these are elite level actual professional athletes, but you're still an athlete and you still require a good amount of fueling.
I love that. It's that framing, right? It's not I'm just going to the gym to train, but yeah, you are an athlete if you're considering everything that, like you said, all the output that you're doing and your goals, obviously. I mean, there are some people that just go just because it's more of a social thing, for example. But I would say, again, that most of our listeners, there is some pretty big goals there. Like I said, they're not going to be pro fighters, but they like the interclubs. They like, they like doing these smaller competitions. Again, too, like we were talking about before the camera started rolling, we have people that are Ironmen that are... You're an Ironman, aren't you? Are you training for an Ironman?
I've done a half Ironman. I haven't done a full. Lauren on our team does Ironmans.
Are you going to do a...
I will do one, yeah.
That's that is... How much fuel do you need for that compared to...
the training, it's just different, but I wouldn't say it's any less fuel than, say, what a professional Muay Thai or a MMA fighter would need. It's just different types of fueling, I guess.
Okay, so then what about differences between disciplines? Like, is there a difference between what I need as if I was, not that I roll, but if I was into jiu-jitsu versus what I feel is more like kind of short bursts like Muay Thai, right? Is there a difference there?
Yes and no. I think the overarching principle you probably need to wrap your head around is what is the activity I need to fuel for, and then what's the best fuel for that activity. And so if you take the example, say you're rolling, you're doing jiu-jitsu, if you're going in for a 2-hour session, but it's 90% technique, very, very different output than if you're going in on an open mat Saturday and all the killers from all the other gyms are dropping in and it turns into an old school Gracie. Like that's a very, very different type of energetic output. And so that's going to be fueled. So I think that's first and foremost. It's this whole concept we call nutrition fuel for the work required. So if you're doing a less intense, I suppose, session, you probably don't need to be going crazy. And you've got the more intense, probably put more in there. But it's also important, what's the big picture look like? You might be doing that light 2-hour session, but like we said earlier, then you've got to go to work and you might be a construction worker for 8 to 10 hours. And then you've got a Muay Thai session that night. So even though you don't have to particularly fuel that one, it's a great opportunity to get fuel in for later on in the day. So I guess, is there a lot of difference? And there's lots of studies looking at this too. When we look at Taekwondo, what type of energetic profile is there between Muay Thai, Taekwondo, Jiu-Jitsu? And it's kind of just like clutching at straws. I think in the big picture of things, it's very clear what type of energy. It's a very glycolytic sport, which means it's high carbohydrate dependent. You need a very good aerobic base, which means your aerobic system does rely on a lot of fat. So you do need fat as a fuel source, but for those short bursts of energy, you do need a lot of carbohydrates. And although the amounts will change depending on the sport, overall, that's pretty true for every combat sport. And coming from someone who's done lots of sports and works with different people in sports, I don't think combat athletes appreciate how hard combat sports are in comparison to other sports. And that's not throwing shade at any other sport, but coming from someone who's played a lot, we work with lots of different athletes, that environment is really, really intense. And those peaks where you're going up and you're working really hard, say for like a wrestling session, very, very difficult. Or if you're sparring in Muay Thai, very, very difficult. Like a lot of other sports don't necessarily require you to have this huge physical output, but then also have someone have a huge physical input on you for such a long period of time. And that requires so much energy. And most people in combat sports don't appreciate just how much they're burning. So it really doesn't matter if you're doing even a lower intensity session, higher intensity session, you're going to have to fuel them. I think when you look at it across, okay, what's it look like in a day, across a training week, you generally land that, you still need a lot more than what you think you do.
Yeah. When I did my one jiu-jitsu session, I remember just lying there and it's like, I'm not even doing anything, but I'm exhausted because there's somebody like physically on me and just, I don't know what to do and my breathing's all erratic. And just to even think about that You think you're lying there, but there's a lot of energy output there, right? Let's touch on because we were talking about stress too, and in kind of the everyday athlete. So stress raises your cortisol, right? There's hormones like adrenaline. How do those two things influence our ability to train and recover and stay consistent?
Yeah, two ways you can look at it. So I guess stress response happens either acutely or chronically. So either really short term or really long term. And a lot of the conversation nowadays when we talk about stress, and this is probably more applicable, probably applicable for professional and everyday athlete, that chronic low grade stress. That takes up a lot of conversation in everyday life. Like we live in this chronic state where we're so stressed all the time, but we don't even realize because it becomes our normal. And really what stress is our autonomic nervous system. We have a parasympathetic, rest and digest, sympathetic, which is our fight or flight. Right. Very, very normal, very, very important part of being human, especially if we think about our evolution and surviving. Very, very important. Stress, our stress response is just a very, very important integral part of our body. That chronic low-grade stress is when the dial is just ticked over to that sympathetic stress for a long period of time consistently. And so whether that's you stressing about your Muay Thai fight in 8 weeks and that's giving you everyday chronic low-grade stress, or you stressing about your job or your finances or whatever, your brain doesn't know the difference. Your body doesn't know. That is all just stress to you. So that's one conversation entirely on its own. Right. But then there's the acute short-term stress where, if you're going out for a competition or a fight or even a sparring session, there is a healthy degree of stress that you need. Right. And this is sports psychology 101, the curve of arousal, right? Yes, like if you're too under-aroused going into a fight, probably not good when you've got a trained killer across from you ready to throw some fist at your face. Yes. But if you're over-aroused, we know what the performance detriments of being overstressed are. Yes. So there is a very healthy sweet spot because you remember, that sympathetic is priming your body for fight or flight. Yes. So you're either going to run that way really, really fast or you're going to stand here and we're going to tango. Yeah. And what your body does is get primed. That system in the short term primes your body to get ready to fight. And so it mobilizes all your fuel sources. It peaks your arousal. Your eyesight gets better. Yes. You get more attentive. Yes. Your reaction times improve. Yes. So short term, that's hugely important. And there's a whole department of sports science dedicated to getting athletes in the zone so they're peak aroused or peak stressed before they compete. Yeah. Where this becomes problematic is, I just had a sparring session at 8 p.m. And I come home, it's 9:30. I've got zero appetite because I'm fight or flight. My body thinks I'm still sparring and I've got to go fight this other human being. Yes. Yeah. Now I can't eat and now I can't sleep and it's 3 a.m. and I'm still worked up and I got to get up and go to 6:30 a.m. jiu-jitsu and then go to work all day. So that is something, it's like a double-edged sword. Very, very good to getting you ready to do these things, but you have to have a system to down-regulate that. And at the highest level of sport, there's stress management coaches now. So that's a whole field of performance where you learn to move from, I'm highly sympathetic, back down to parasympathetic. So you can support your recovery, you can support your performance. But then if we go back to this chronic low-grade stress, that has an entirely different effect on our physiology. Because again, these short-term hormones, cortisol, noradrenaline, epinephrine, all these things that are getting released, great for getting us ready to run away from a bear or fight a bear, probably not great for us to hang around 24/7 for months and months on end. That's where we can get these problems where we're seeing, people when they go, how does this relate to nutrition? And we go, well, we know when cortisol and all these things arise, your appetite is out of whack. And anyone, like I said, have you sparred, it's very difficult to eat afterwards. But then you also get crazy cravings. We know that there's a relationship between your body trying to get blood glucose because the glucose is what's firing up your body to get ready to fight. So that's where we get these cravings. Again, very, very useful in this short term when we're getting ready to punch on with each other. Probably not great when we're looking at this long term. And there's even the way we know that people who have raised cortisol probably tend to store adipose tissue differently and affects it. Again, all of that has a very good systematic reasoning when it comes to this short-term acute stress response. when we drag this out, chronic low-grade stress, it becomes very problematic. Not even just for athletes, just everyday people.
Okay. So I think, I mean, the big thing there is it's not just you're fueling your training, you're fueling your recovery too, right? You really need to start thinking about that. So is there something nutrition-wise, dietary-wise that we should be looking at or thinking about when we're considering our low-grade chronic stress as opposed to that kind of, short-term burst, right? That short-term stress that is good for us. But like you said, when you come back and you can't, your stomach feels smaller and like it just had no appetite, like you said, and kind of like amped up. You had a good sparring session, right? But like you said, you can't sleep until 3. Is there something I can do to prepare before that sparring match, or is there something that I should be doing when I get home, for example?
So I guess 2 things, like physiologically, learn how to downregulate, like whether that's breath work, whether that's mindfulness, whether it's journaling when you get home, dark room, all these things. There's lots of people who can tell you many more things about that. In terms of nutrition, what we say to our guys, if you are still in that stressed out state, we do appreciate it. But I also appreciate you got to go to jiu-jitsu in the morning. Yes. So whether you feel like eating or not, we've got to get that fuel in, and you go, and then the conversation goes, okay, all of these stress hormones have decreased my appetite. What do we do? And that's where going in, okay, instead of having a huge dinner with chicken and vegetables and rice and potatoes and all that, why don't we just make a smoothie? Why don't we get a fruit smoothie? We get some almond milk, we get some protein powder in there. We'll throw some peanut butter, make it pretty decent. You can get 600-700 calories in there. You got your good carbohydrates. We're going to restore that glycogen overnight, get that liver glycogen back up. You're not going to want to drink it. You're not going to feel like, oh, I'm going to be, looking for more food. But you're going to put it in anyway, because we appreciate that you're not going to feel like it, but you've got to get it in for the next morning. So just little strategies like that are very, very useful. But that's a very common scenario. People train at night, get really worked up, get home, go, I just do.
Right. You have to. And, make it palatable, right? It's just, if you can just down that smoothie. You said almond milk. So almond milk's better than oat milk, yes?
No,
we can take that out if you actually don't want to be quoted on it. I'm a big almond milk fan. I think that it has less sugar, right?
Yeah, definitely does. Yeah. I mean,
better than cow's milk.
I mean, I'm not against cow's milk. I think everyone's got this weird thing against it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too. I know there's a whole line of thought with the dairy and the different milks. At the end of the day, I think of it this way, like, cow's milk is a pretty good source of protein. When I look at it, it's a pretty what we call complete source. All those amino acids that your body can't make, you get it in there. And then people go, oh, it's not that natural, is it? Like, it's not natural that we go suck the teat of a cow. And I go, yeah, it's not really natural either that we jump in and a big piece of metal that flies 13,000 kilometers around at, X speed. Doesn't matter that I can jump in my big pickup truck and go 200 kilometers north whenever I want to. None of those things are normal. So that's evolution. But then I also go, almond milk. And I'm an almond milk guy, oat milk. And then when people go, oh, they're so much better, I go, yeah, but at least that animal was designed to make milk. I've never seen an almond or oat make milk. And it's just like, you can get better. It's like everything. You can get good ones and bad ones. Like if you're going to drink that stuff, I think it's just the overall philosophy. Like we have a very whole foods based philosophy. If you're going to go get oat milk, almond milk, cow's milk, doesn't matter. Like you're going to get your almond milk, check the ingredients. Is there 2 or 3 ingredients in there? Okay, great. Is there 17 and you can't pronounce half of them? Probably not as good. Right. So that's kind of where I sit with it. What's
your stance on organic food or what's labeled to be organic, right? Especially within our supermarkets, I went through the entire, everything is organic. Now everything is, like, for example, the eggs are all free range eggs. I'm like, but are they really? And now living in Bali, it's like, I'm just picking up my eggs from my neighbor who has the chickens there. And like, I think they're still warm sometimes when I get them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So how much do we need to pay attention to those labels?
I think as a guiding principle, for sure. Like, I think it's ridiculous if you're trying to make the argument that, like you said, is this egg that I'm getting from my neighbor, where it literally just plopped out of the chicken a few hours ago, is that going to be more nutritious than this thing that's been, probably plopped out 2 years ago? It's gone through all this storage. It's been modified and everything. Yeah, sometimes, it's absolutely wild. So I think as a founding principle, for sure, like the organic, whole foods, absolutely. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. I think where it gets tricky is two parts, is accessibility and affordability to people becomes really difficult. We work with a lot of people in the United States, and I had a very interesting conversation with one of my colleagues, Tyler Minton. He talks about this. He lives in the South, and some crazy percentage of people live on food stamps and coupons. And so his argument is, well, if we're trying to get everyone to do organic and whole food, that's 60, 70% of my population down here that literally won't be able to afford food. Yes. So what's better is just getting the calories in or starving. What's better? And so that's an argument. And I guess the other argument, and this is probably running a supplement company, seeing the insides of how the food world works, is that, like you alluded to, the labeling of organic. Yes. How does that work? And it's not as straightforward as you would probably like, where, okay, this free-range chicken has full reign and is this farm. It's probably not like that. And at least from what I've seen, I know certain products that we make have been told, oh, you can put organic on there. And I go, well, it's not organic. That's the thing. They go, oh yeah, but if you do this and do that and do this, then you can put that label on there. And fundamentally for me, I go, no, I completely disagree with that. But that is something that happens. Yes, if you're willing to pay the money, you can get the label. So I guess that's the other part. But I think as a founding principle, for sure, I don't think anyone could argue that. Eat more whole foods. If you can eat organic, if it's growing out of the ground, for sure, that's absolutely going to be better. It's going to be more nutritious. It's going to be better for you in the long run. How accessible is it? And then that's a whole entire debate on itself on what the label actually means and how you get that.
You brought up a good point of your clients in the southern U.S. Very often, still to this day, we hear about kind of the struggling fighter, and they're just trying to pay the bills, and they might not have as much disposable income to eat the whole foods, the organic foods. What are some pillars or principles that they can, live by to at least make sure that they are getting the healthiest bang for their buck?
Yeah, I think first thing, we need to appreciate healthy eating is a real privilege. And like you alluded to, like we work with so many fighters, athletes, they've got this big dream in their mind, only they can see it, and they're going all in. So they're putting every paycheck towards this. Often they're cramming in, share houses, they're running or walking or riding their bike with a flat tire to the gym. They don't have money to go buy these things. So I guess like founding principles is fueling is important, especially if you're going to do this long term. Like you need to get those calories in. And so that's number one. So if it is a decision between going without or getting it in, get it in. Like just get it in. You need to be able to fuel your training. Okay. Next thing is like, okay, buy in bulk. Like buy in bulk and go cheap. And there's good options. Like you can get cans of fish, cans of tuna, pasta. You can get big blocks of beef mince, or you can get meat in bulk, and you can cook pasta with meat, and you can get cheese and put it on top of it. Like you don't need to be going and making fancy, crazy meals and getting fresh avocados and all of these things that they're really expensive and inaccessible to a lot of people. So if you can buy in bulk, you can meal prep, you can do everything you can to get the most, we call it like dollars per gram of quality food. That's going to be advantageous to you. But it's a harsh reality that they're not going to be able to eat like Alex Volkanovski or Israel Adesanya, who can afford private chefs and can have someone like me telling them every week what they need to eat, and then we're ordering in food from all these different cool sources. That's, even for everyday people, that's not attainable for 80, 90% of people. So it's like work within your means, and I think if it becomes a decision of calories or no calories, get the calories in. Even if that means you've got to eat some less favorable foods, get it in. And you see that all the time. You see that at fight gyms. Guys train, they're starving, they need calories, they can't eat it, and they just go to like a kebab shop or something. At the end of the day, they're probably getting their daily calories in on that meal, which is good for their body in terms of a energy availability sense. Is it the best for micronutrients and getting all that in? Probably not. No way. But is that in the realm of reality for them right now? Probably not. So then even there, we're like, okay, let's at least get a supplement. Let's try and get that in somewhere else, which is a bit more affordable and realistic for you right now. But then giving them the education over time with, okay, and a lot of the time you'll see with fighters, for example, they'll go spend money on a consult with me or someone else, or buy new gloves or do whatever. Maybe that's not the best use of their money at that stage of their career. So maybe a little bit of education of, hey, you know what, instead of going on that holiday to here for that isn't even related to your fighting, maybe put that money in and we can enhance your dietary intake. Maybe instead of buying those new Nike shoes that you don't need, maybe we can put this over here. Yeah. Once it becomes enough of a priority and they understand, okay, it's not just about the calories. It's not if it fits your macros, all these micronutrients, the good source of whole foods actually does make a difference. It's going to reduce my injury risk over time. I'm going to feel a lot better. My energy levels are going to be better. My skin's going to be better. Everything's going to be better. Then I'll make it a priority. It's just a hard combo to have when you haven't experienced the other side of it.
Right. You mentioned supplements. Is there a specific, I don't want to diminish or oversimplify, but is there a specific stack of supplements that combat sports athletes, martial artists should be paying attention to? Or is this, again, just general in life?
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Yeah. I mean, creatine's a big one. I think everyone should be having creatine. Yes. Yeah. Fighter, everyday person, grandma, grandpa, dog, whatever.
Why is it so important?
Because it's the least risk. There is a risk with creatine, and people don't talk about it. If you have mental health problems where you've got, say, a certain psychiatric condition, creatine can bring on those psychiatric conditions. Okay. Yeah, and I won't go into too much, but we did have a client with that once, and she didn't disclose this information to us, and that's how I found out about it. And then after talking to people like Dr. Scott Forbes, who's kind of Mr. Creatine and the world leading expert about it, he said, you know what? We often say it's the most studied, there's no risk whatsoever with creatine, but for a very, very, very small percentage of people, if they have these pre-existing conditions, for whatever reason, it does seem to make it worse. But for the majority of people, it's just better. Like there's a lot of the original research is just strength and explosiveness, right? So if like you're running, you're sprinting, the first couple seconds, we use what's called our creatine phosphate system. So if you're getting external creatine in, you're basically building up those stores, and we know we can hyper soak those or physiologically enhance those stores. Okay. And so you're just getting initially in that initial pop, that strength and power increases. And we see that very, very, very consistently throughout all research. Right. And anyone who takes it, generally that's what you'll hear them say. Okay. But now we're seeing there's all these other benefits. I think the big one is the brain health side of it. And we use it a lot with our athletes, like post-concussion, for TBI treatments, and it seems very promising, even for so far as sleep deprivation. Yes. There's now protocols for, it seems that if you have periods of sleep deprivation, and I think a good example, say you've just had new kids, got to show up to work or do whatever, that you can use a creatine protocol to minimize those effects of sleep deprivation. So it seems to be this kind of wonder supplement that for 99.8% of people is pretty good for and risk averse. So I think creatine's probably number one.
I know I should be taking creatine. I haven't started.
Yeah, we'll start tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
Creatine's I think a good protein supplement.
Protein supplement?
I think so. Just more so if we're talking, whether you're a busy person trying to train or you're that elite level fighter, you're probably busy, you're running around. It's just an easy way to get your protein in. And we know for fighters, they do have higher protein needs. If you're going to cut weight, one of the founding principles is we want to hold on to as much muscle mass as possible. You have to have quite a high level of protein to do that. And that's a lot of chicken breast, it's a lot of steak, it's a lot of whatever you're trying to get, a lot of milk, whatever you're trying to get your protein from, it's a lot of it. So having those protein supplements once or twice a day does help get it up.
Can that just be a protein powder that I just put into a smoothie?
Yeah, or water or whatever.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Okay, so creatine and protein powder. Anything else?
Big one. I would say beta-alanine's a good one that not a lot of people talk about.
Ah, what does that do?
So beta-alanine, it helps buffer the acetic acid, which in more correct terms, it's not really acetic acid that makes you get tired when you're exercising. When acetic acid breaks apart in your body, you get what's called a hydrogen ion. That hydrogen ion is very acidic. That's what gives you that really crappy feeling.
Is that lactic acid? Is that the same?
Lactic acid. Well, yeah, so lactic acid itself is not bad. Lactic acid gets recycled through the body and we use it as energy. Lactic acid got the short end of the stick and everyone talks a lot of crap about it. That's really the hydrogen ion attached to that lactic acid. And what beta-alanine does is it helps clear that, helps buffer it. So if you can take that, you'll probably know if you ever had pre-workouts, that real tingly feeling.
Yeah, that's why I took pre-workout once or twice and I was like, never again. It's so weird.
That comes from the beta-alanine. The paresthesia, we call it, comes from the beta-alanine. Okay. But I like to just give it on its own. I think pre-workouts, I think bodybuilders are so depleted all the time. I think they love the extra stimulation of all the stuff in pre-workout. But that specific component, the beta-alanine, can be very useful, especially for high-intensity sports, which we know combat sports are.
Okay. Sweet. All right. So creatine, a protein supplement, beta-alanine. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think in terms of health, I would go omega-3.
Oh, yeah.
would be very, very good.
As a woman, I'm going to say, especially for women, I say that. I don't know why, though. I say because that's what I was trained to. As women, we should be having a lot more omega-3. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, men, women,
men
kids,
and women.
Everyone. It's just very not difficult to get in the diet. Okay. But again, like you think about the food sources, like salmon, for example, it's quite expensive too. If you're thinking about those guys we were talking about earlier, what's the chances that they're going to be getting fresh Atlantic salmon every week? Probably not.
Exactly.
So it's like probably look to make up that deficiency. And I guess in that same line of thought, if we're thinking about when you're cutting weight in your fight camp, like an everyday multivitamin is a really good option, especially if you're doing a bit bigger of a weight cut. And a lot of the newer guys, everyday athletes, you have to take short notice fights. Yes. So if you're doing that and you've got to make a certain weight, there's no, I guess, leeway in that you have to eat this many calories to get that weight off. And often that's quite low. And to do that, then that means you have to restrict your food choices, and you'll probably have suboptimal amounts of micronutrients, which is where a multivitamin can just help bridge that gap. Okay. And even when you're training a lot for the professional guys, if they're cutting weight, they're doing 3-4 fight camps a year. Yeah. If you don't need it, you're probably just going to pee it out, and you're not going to have enough where there's a toxicity effect where you get too much of it. So it's a very safe thing to do, and it's relatively cheap. So having a multivitamin is really good, especially if you're dieting quite frequently. And one that's quite interesting that getting a lot of airtime now is sodium bicarbonate. So it's been like a...
Is that baking soda?
Baking soda, which was...
Wait, isn't that baking soda?
Yeah,
okay.
This was big. I remember when I was a student years and years and years and years ago. So this was huge. Even before that, 20 years. Okay. And we know it works. It works really well. And it helps in the same sense that the way beta-alanine works, buffering the hydrogen ions, the lactic acid.
So I could literally take my box of Arm & Hammer that's in the fridge and just like...
Absolutely. No, but the problem is that most people will run to the toilet and get diarrhea or severe stomach problems. Okay. And this is why sodium bicarbonate kind of got pushed to the side. Okay. And then it's just made a resurgence recently as there's been new technology. The problem is that we eat these things or we digest them and it has to get through our stomach and then get into our blood to be effective. But on that path, it causes this havoc of problems, this myriad of problems. And so people go, I don't care. There's a benefit to it. I don't want to deal with these. Yeah. As the science has gotten better, we've got better delivery systems of this so we can get it through the stomach and get it into the blood more efficiently without them. And we're seeing that's really, really a good supplement. I have a cross-country skier getting ready for the Winter Olympics qualifiers, and he said this is probably the single best thing we've done working together for the last 12 months, getting him ready for this. He said the sodium bicarbonate is probably the most impactful supplement he's had on his performance.
Wow. Okay, I want to see the lift in sodium bicarbonate surges now.
Yeah, I should buy stocks in a sodium bicarbonate company.
I was gonna say. All right, anything else there? Oh, we've got a good list here.
I think that's basically all of it. I'd say the only other one I'd say is more that post-weigh-in period. Yes. And I mean, I'm biased because like spent years creating a product specifically for this, but just electrolytes specifically designed for the post-weigh-in period. And I think that's an important distinction to make.
Why is that different?
Because, and again, I'll put it out there. Like I run a supplement company and our main product is electrolytes, but I'm probably one of the biggest advocates against electrolytes because I think there's a huge amount of misinformation out there. I think being in the supplement world, I see how people with lots of money come in and they make these huge marketing beasts and they take advantage of, say, fighters down here who have limited resources and then they get conned into using those limited resources into things that probably aren't best for them, which is why it kind of annoys me a little bit. Electrolytes are important. Say if you're in Bali and it's really hot and you're sweating, but we know like you don't need to replace electrolytes unless you're sweating about 5 liters of fluid out of your body, which if you're training in Bali for 2 hours, you could probably lose that much. Right. So if you've got to do 2 sessions a day in Bali, for sure electrolytes are important. Okay. But if you're just a person that's going to a jiu-jitsu session where you're laying on your back most of the time, it's no gi, you're not even in a hot gi, you're not sweating that much, you'll see a lot of people just pound back electrolytes. It's not necessary.
Oh my gosh. So when I say to my friends back in Toronto, still back in my hometown, I'm like, you got to drink electrolytes. They probably don't need to drink electrolytes.
No, probably not. There are like circumstances where you absolutely do. Okay. So say like Ironman, if you're going for a certain period of time where you're turning over that much sweat, that's going to mean that your body needs those electrolytes. Okay. it's very interesting because we think of, say, sodium and electrolytes the same way we think about carbs, where we go do a hard training session, we deplete it, it goes out of our body and we got to put it back in. That's not how it works. Like, our body keeps it in a very tight balance in the water in our body.
Okay.
And so it's not until we lose so much water that it changes the balance of electrolytes that we have. Yeah, and so when we're cutting weight, you're doing something that's very extreme. You're taking out a lot of water. You're putting that balance really out of whack. And the way that the first thing you need to do once you get off that scale is correct that balance. That's one of the biggest problems that you see in fight. And that was one of the things that really helped us with our career, is that there were lots of people doing weight cut science, and I guess we kind of came in and polished it up. Yes. But that was one area that I saw, at the UFC highest level of the sport. People were coming in, they're throwing up after weigh-ins. You see people drop, they have seizures, they go to hospital, they're like violently ill. Yeah. That was happening at the highest level of the sport. And the reason for it is that they weren't addressing the actual problem that happens after a weigh-in, which your blood sodium levels are up here, where really the drinks that most of them were consuming, these high salt drinks, these really salty electrolyte drinks, really fixes a problem when your sodium levels are down here. But your sodium levels are not down here, they're up here. So you need to come in with a different approach. And that's why a different type of electrolyte drink, like what we call an oral rehydration solution. Okay. So you know it, Hydrolyte, Pedialyte. Yes. These are things that are made for people who are severely dehydrated. And like in a third world country. Yes. And it's to get them, if they don't have access to an IV fluid, it's for them to replace that fluid in their body and rebalance those electrolytes. But that's very similar to the state of someone who's just done a big weight cut. Yes. Yeah. And so you need to use that type of solution, correct that balance, and then you can address, okay, we lost a lot of salt. We didn't have salt for 3, 4, 5 days, but you've got to fix that fluid problem first.
I see. Okay, so living in Bali, so I've lived there for almost 7 years now. When the Balinese or Indonesians say you need to get some electrolytes in you, it's the Orlite, like it's those packs. It's not the fancy like sodium rich packs of electrolytes that you would generally see, I guess, in the Western world that are all flavored and like, So, and I remember going, this seems more medical, but it's true, right? It's for a different purpose. So what you're saying is not all electrolyte is the same, and it's not attacking the same or I guess treating the same state, right, that you're in. So you have to be careful of those. And that's where your supplement comes in.
Yeah. And what really made me, I guess, appreciate this is when we got into working with, say, Ironmen or ultra marathoners that are running for 3, 4, 5 days, especially if they're in hot, humid conditions and they lose a lot and they can't keep up with the fluid intake. Right. They end up in a very similar physiological profile as a fighter who just cut weight. Right. And we were seeing that a lot with the ultra endurance guys, that they would drink these really highly salty drinks and then they'd get worse. And you go, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But then it's because you're treating the wrong problem. So if you come at it with a different angle, all of a sudden you go with a lower sodium drink, you correct the fluid, which then corrects the sodium balance, then you can come in and correct the sodium deficit, which then we had a lot of success in the ultra endurance world with because it was the same concept that we took from our fighters after weigh-ins. And that's why we have such a good record at the UFC with our fighters making weight, that they genuinely recover the best as well afterwards, because I think we've solved that problem the quickest, and we found out about it. And for the first year I had that product, I kept it behind closed doors because that was the period where we had 3 UFC champions, and it was a real advantage to us. Like if I went to a UFC and I saw our opponent after weigh-ins chugging back these weird drinks, I'd see them go be sick. And it's like, to me, I was like, I guess you're ethically torn because as a health professional, you should be helping, but I get paid to help the guys win. Right. And that was a huge competitive advantage for us. But at some point we did have to sit back and go, look, that is an actual problem. Right. We've got to kind of release this education and release this product out to the world.
So then for our listeners, the supplement is available on the Fight Dietitian website?
Yeah, Train Aid Hydration.
Okay, all right. Can you tell us a little bit about how the Fight Dietitian, how the brand came about? Yeah,
so I was always interested in fighting. Like started boxing when I was about 12, but I played rugby my whole life. I was convinced I was going to be a professional rugby player. And then I stopped growing when I was 16 and those dreams quickly went out the window. Right. But when I finished my master's degree, I also was trying to get into med school. So when I went through university, my whole mantra was I want to get into medical school. And so I did all my pre-med, I did lots of different, I guess, studies that you probably wouldn't do as a nutritionist. Nutrition was just interesting to me from the science point of view, and I wanted to go into endocrinology. And there's a very tight relationship between food and hormones and everything. I thought it would help me when I went into med school. But that never happened and never came to fruition. I finished my master's and I thought, you know what am I going to do then? And then my brother was living in Canada and he said, just come over for 6 months, clear your head. And then
it's a great place.
Yeah. And I went over there and then we moved to Toronto, funny enough.
Yeah.
And then, ended up staying there for about 3 years. But it was over there, I guess, that's when I guess I had a bit more pressure taken off. I wasn't studying as much. I wasn't in a hospital setting. I worked in an oncology and pal care setting for my last year of my studies. And then I was working in operating theatres as a theatre orderly for 2-3 years in my study. So it was a very intense clinical,
it's pretty
full
intense.
on. And then when I went over to Canada, it kind of relaxed a little bit. And then I started having these conversations and got these jobs in sports nutrition in the sports supplement world, working with college hockey players, basketballers, and then eventually finding myself to the MMA gym where I was training a lot, boxing, doing lots of jiu-jitsu, kickboxing. And then I started having these conversations. And I think that's where my mind kind of ticked and I went, how is it that I don't know the answer to these questions? And I think having all that clinical background was really useful. And that was probably the first time where I realized like, oh, wow, like you could probably merge these two worlds. Like all that nutrition information that you got that you didn't think would be that useful is now really, really useful when you merge it with all this clinical biomed that you did as well. And I guess that really started me on the trajectory to try to figure out what's going on. And what really started it is that, I thought there's got to be other people doing it.
Yeah, I was going to say, were there?
Yeah, there were people. Like Mike Dolce was, and he's been a big mentor of mine. He kind of started, he worked with Ronda Rousey back in the day, like 2016. She was kind of coming to the end of the career. So like 4 or 5 years before that, he was with her and he had his whole system. There were other guys that did it. I mean, there was another team that I ended up connecting with who was working with Conor McGregor at the time. And I ended up, looking back on it, it was a good business play from them. They'd sell these like, what they call it, like a certificate. And it was really expensive. I'd maxed out my credit card getting over there. And I thought, this is going to give me all these answers about this. And I remember going over there, sitting in this room and then hearing these guys present. I just remember sitting there and going, wow, these guys are idiots. And it was a real big moment for me because I thought these guys are doing this at the highest level of the sport with the biggest athlete in the sport and they have no idea what they're talking about.
Was it just like archaic thinking? Was it just
it was thinking from the sense of that generational knowledge passed down in the gym. There wasn't a science basis behind anything what they were saying. So like even though the concepts in a broad sense would kind of work, it was kind of like, and I saw it because I hung around with them for a while to see, does this work in practice? And I saw with their team, it was like, okay, maybe this athlete, like the Conor, it works for, but then there's 2 or 3 that this goes really bad. And I remember being in a sauna with one and that she was passed out. This athlete was passed out, in and out of consciousness. Coach was dragging her in and out. And I'm kind of sitting there looking at this team and they don't know what to do because they don't have any of that training. So it's like I realized very quickly is that, so they put the spotlight on these guys where it works, but there's all these athletes that are, and that's when I said, you know what, if this works over here in North America, and I saw how the UFC was growing, and this was the Conor McGregor era where he just rocketed it. And then I thought, you know what, I know there's some really good talent in Australia and New Zealand as well. If I bring this back and I can inject some science, I think this would work. Like, and this was something I was training at the time. I was doing it. So it was something I was really passionate about. But more than anything, it was this scientific problem that kind of merged these two worlds I was in. And I thought, you know what, like, I think I can solve this. And so I kind of brought that back. I packed up everything, came back to Australia, and then had a huge credit card debt. So I took a job at a sports clinic. I took a job at a hospital, and then another job building what was going to become TFD, the Fight Dietitian. And then, so I was trying to balance all of that. And then eventually it just kind of came to a point where I was like, got to make a decision. Like, what do you want to do? And I thought, you know what, I think I can make a positive impact here. I'm just going to dive all in. And then, did it.
That's such a great story. It's such a great story. And obviously you're making a positive impact. What's, one thing that you're super proud of with TFD and how far it's come, and what's something that is just like you just want to solve? What is something, or what's your next goal with TFD?
Something I'm very proud of. I think the weight cutting is something I'm very, very proud of. And I think that experience at least, and you know what, I'm pretty grateful for that team as well for giving me that experience to be able to see that and whatever. I think something I'm very proud of is I think we were able to inspire a whole new generation of nutritionists and dietitians to come on through. Yeah. Because one thing I have learned, coming back to our first point that we spoke about, in Australia and New Zealand, yeah, we've made some really good change and certain gyms that have worked with us. And yeah, there is that cultural change, but there's lots and lots and lots of gyms around the world where that isn't the case. Right. And so the only way you get that big global impact, and that's what we want to get rid of all the dangers of weight cutting. I think it's crazy that as a prerequisite to the sport you love, you have to risk killing yourself. Yes. So we need to get rid of that. And the way we do that is not through the work we do, but by inspiring these next generation of nutritionists and dietitians to echo that message and educate all these other fight gyms around the world in Russia, China, Brazil, America, all through Europe, the UK, and then make changes on the local level. And I think that's how you change this and you get rid of it. So that's probably the thing that I think we're most proud of. Okay. I think there's always going to be problems in sports nutrition. I think what we've done, and I guess an area that I've got very interest in, I guess, is what we call like extreme physiology. Okay. So what happens to the human body when you're trying to perform in an extreme environment? And I guess that's what weight cutting is. And like I spoke about to you before with the sodium balance and the fluid, that's not a new concept. We've known about that for 70, 80 years, but it's never really been applied in this specific sense. So I guess there's a few problems like that I see now in not only just fighting, but say ultra endurance, in Ironman, I've worked with quite a few jockeys who do horse racing, where they have to manipulate weight 3 times a week and then do it every single week for 4 months straight. So there's specific problems there that probably aren't spoken about in the mainstream because they sit in what we call this extreme physiological zone, and no one really wants to touch it because it's quite dangerous. But I guess we've kind of lived in that furnace for the last 10 years of our life, so professionally, we're very comfortable being in there. So I guess they're the type of problems we're trying to solve.
Right. And I mean, again, in the fight world, we are, well, I mean, the 2 Japanese fighters, Kotari and Urakawa, right? I don't know if you want to comment on it, but I mean, are we doing enough? The protocols or whatnot that they put in place, I don't even know what they put in place after that in terms of like hydration and or rehydration or the massive drastic weight cuts. Like, that's not enough at this point, is it?
Yeah, I mean, we've had this conversation a lot because, we had this happen in Australia in 2015. We had a girl who was competing in Muay Thai in Thailand, was cutting weight, running on the road, collapsed and passed away. And that has caused the Western Australian government, I've done a lot of work with them, and we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we do exactly that, stop this extreme weight cutting? There's the 3 college wrestlers that in, I'd say the 90s, I think this happened, passed away in a sauna. And that led to the changes in the weight regulations we see NCAA wrestling. Okay. And then we had one championship's hydration protocols off the back of an athlete passing away as well, cutting weight. The problem is that what I've learned and what I've learned working with these organizations, all of these people that try to put in these rule sets, is that fundamentally they're never going to work, because fundamentally fighters are always going to want to get an edge. And so long as they see weight cutting as a way to get an edge, or there's going to be a size advantage, they're going to find a way to bend the rules and do it. Like, one hydration testing is a perfect example, right? Like, I get hired by people to come in and cheat that test. And it doesn't matter what sport. I don't even know if I should say this publicly, we do a lot of work with, say, esports racing. Yeah. And these, say, Zwift racing. So essentially what they do is that they race on a stationary bike, which is linked up to a computer. Okay. And the way that the system works is that it tells how much power they're producing, and then their sim on the screen will race. Mm-hmm. But straight away, people figured out that, okay, I've got to weigh in. Yeah. If I can cut weight, weigh in, submit my weight, film it, and then I can put on a bunch of weight. When I get on that bike, my power to weight ratio is far higher because my recorded weight on the sim in this system is lower, but I'm producing weight from someone that's 4 or 5 kilos heavier. And we worked with some of the top athletes there doing exactly that.
Because what's the time frame between that? Like when they weigh in and then they get
12, 14, 16 hours, sometimes 4 hours, not long. But the thing is, I can come in as an expert in that and go, I can safely do that with you. That's the rule set you've put in. I can easily get around that. Same with one hydration protocol. You want to make weight, still cut weight. I know the physiology probably better than the guys putting in the protocols. I can get around that. So for me, as the professional coming in, I go, that's not how you solve this. The problem is not going to be solved by putting in regulation. The problem is solved by going back in and doing cultural changes at the local gym level. Until that person goes there and goes, you know what, there's not that big advantage, even though all the evidence that's coming out, we've got evidence from UFC, Bellator, all different combat sports now. We know, like, you coming into a fight, being a bit heavier, being a bit bigger makes no difference to the end result. And anyone who fights should be able to appreciate that because it's such a multifaceted, complex sport.
Right.
Until we change the thinking that you are going to get an advantage from that at the gym level, that athlete is always going to do whatever they can to get that advantage because it's everything to them. It's everything. And they see these top-level fighters, and the biggest, baddest athlete on the world for hundreds of years has been the heavyweight world champion boxer. And now we've got the UFC. So all of these superstars, all of these people want to be that person. They'll do whatever they can to get there, even if it means risking their health, risking their lives. And until we change it at that cultural, local gym level, it's always going to be a problem. They're always going to find a way to get around it. They're going to hire professionals to come in and help them do that. And it's always going to be a problem. Local culture is how you change it.
It's a big task, but I think that you can do it. I think the TFD can do it.
I hope so.
Right? I mean, you're already starting, right? As, like you said, I mean, you've been working with the Australian government, but have the local gyms here in Australia or here even in Queensland, have they changed? Are they starting to change?
I think so. I think Australia and New Zealand are probably some of the best weight cutters in the world. And I think, and it's not just me, there's lots of people who do my job that have huge impact. And I think there's a lot of gyms in the US, say, that work with people like Charles Stull, who runs the nutrition department at the UFC, Tyler Minton, who's one of the best combat sports nutritionists out there, Ian Larios, Eric Pena, these guys that they're great at what they do and they have that impact, but you can only impact so many gyms, right? And I think that's where this continuing education and upskilling these nutritionists, not just the hard skills, right? Like I could walk you through right now and upskill you in 2 hours to do all the maths and write a meal plan. But how do you get that buy-in? So when it comes push comes to shove and I say, hey, look, Johnny, you don't have to cut 12% of your body weight. There's literally no difference. If you cut 8%, you're going to feel better. You're going to perform just as good. But then Johnny goes, well, no, Billy, Bobby, and Timmy all cut that much and they all keep winning. So you're telling me if I don't do that, like, who do I trust, these guys or you? Until we can change that thought process and say, where Johnny or whatever his name was doesn't even question it. He doesn't even question it. And he goes, no, I don't want to do a big weight cut. Until you get that across the board, weight cutting is always going to be a problem.
It feels to me that, in some regards, the weight cut, because it's part of the fight camp, it's part of the fight. It's like, it's just part of the ritual almost. So I think some people might see it as a badge of honor before you even step in the ring, right? Which is, that's a whole different way of thinking too, right?
I mean, we have lots of, there's lots of studies, white paper studies that show exactly that it forms the identity of a fighter. And we know that there's the psychological side of it. And just being in the sport, even being an athlete myself, like I used to have arguments in my own head getting on the scale where it'd be like, oh God, like I should just eat air today. I'm too heavy. But then dietitian me would be like, you're an idiot. Go eat your oatmeal and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so I totally get it because it's like scary missing weight. It's like that everyone's watching you when you're on the scale. And if it's like 1 gram over, it's terrifying. And then but at the end of the day, what we need to do is be changing that thought process behind it, because I've been, say, Muay Thai shows where it's like you're lining up with your fighter and everyone's saying, how much weight did you cut? How much weight did you cut? I cut the most weight. I cut the most weight. And it's like you said, a badge of honor. You have to change that. That's a cultural thing, because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be about, who cut the most weight. It's like, well, did you get your hand raised? Like, did you get one step closer to that title? And we know that if you're doing these big weight cuts, it's not good for your longevity in the sport. It's not good for your health in the long term. We know that there can be real serious consequences in the short term. So why not focus on the performance? Why is that not the badge of honor? But again, it comes back. It's part of the identity of being a fighter. And I always talk about it. Israel Adesanya has probably one of the best mental games in all of fighting. And he talks about it. Ronda Rousey used to talk about it as this change, this psychological change where Israel Adesanya is tucked away and the last style bender comes out once I go through the last part of this weight cut. And I could see that, like, he truly embodies that character and it comes out, but it's only when we're about 200-300 grams away from making weight. His body's depleted, he's down, and it's a primal thing. He talks about it. This is like primal energy and this is a survival thing for me. And now I have to go out and it's kill or be killed. And for the next 24 to 36 hours, I am the style bender. And then after that fight, he goes away, I put the weight back on, come back out, and he's tucked away for when I need him again. And that is a huge psychological advantage. So it's this hard, difficult task where it's, okay, well, we know physically probably not good doing these big weight cuts, but psychologically there is some type of benefit there. So how do you juggle this then?
I'm curious, what did Ronda Rousey say? Because I'm also curious about weight cuts as it applies to females, right? And especially when, depending on where we are in our cycle. I mean, because like before my fight, I mean, I was weighing like 2 kilograms more all of a sudden, obviously, because I was about to get my period. I'm like, oh, great. Like that's a mind trip too, right? So I'm curious like what Ronda said and like how you help your clients with that.
I mean, Ronda basically just echoed what Israel said. That's a very primal experience. For her to get into the zone to fight, she has to go through that depletion phase. It locks her in mentally. But lots of fighters say that. Lots and lots of fighters will talk about that. In terms of your point from your female, absolutely. I've got a world champion boxer, like literally the best in the world at what she does. And we have this problem every time. We have to almost try to coordinate fights around her cycle because exactly like you said, okay, we should be at this weight, but we're 1.5 kilos heavier. And she's going, what do I do? And I go, well, this is just...
fight's not going to change dates because of
it's just something you have to track and you have to be aware of and you have to have strategies. Okay, if this happens, then we have to probably push a bit harder on these things and, mentally prep yourself. We're going to have to sweat a bit more. And that's a real thing. And I don't like it when people say, oh, guys and girls, they're not the same. They're absolutely not the same. When it comes to weight cutting, they do change. Absolutely. And we see that. And it's tough for females because it's not a luck of the draw, but it almost is in the sense that does everything line up perfectly with your natural rhythms of your body that things are going to go well for you. And if you think about the chances, it's like probably you're going to be in a bad position just purely by the lottery ticket of it. This lands here, there's more chance that it's not going to work out better for you because you've probably got a week there where everything would work out great and you do cut weight like a guy. Those other few weeks, probably not going to happen. So it's like you do have to take that into account. What I've learned over the years is you've got to be very diligent with tracking everything. You need to know, okay, are you someone where the weight goes back up and you hold fluid? I've had female athletes, they prefer cutting weight when their period comes and they go, I feel better, I don't know, I just let the water go. And there is some science behind that where you don't have to, their core body temperature goes a little bit higher, which means you don't have to put them in as hot an environment so they'll sweat a bit easier. So maybe that's playing into it. So there are both extremes where it's like some athletes will prefer doing it. The majority, I would say, no, it's problematic. And we need to have strategies in order to sort that out.
What about strategies for managing your emotions, your nervous system? Like when you are that depleted, everything has to go out of whack. And I learned on Tuesday, I had a guest, Victor Popov, and he was talking about the 3 parts of the nervous system. So you talked about the CNS and the ANS, but then there's the enteric nervous system, right? And that's more about your gut and your bio, or your gut and what's happening there, right? So how do you manage all of that when everything is just, you're depleted? Like, how can you think clearly? How can you feel clearly? How can you navigate
human body's crazy.
life?
Like the human body is a survival machine. Like that's the thing, is we are designed. Like I guess there's reasons why there's stories of religious figures going out in the desert for 40 days and fasting, and you see that across all these religions. I guess we are survival machines. Like the thing is, we have a whole entire physiological system based on starvation. The thing is so we can survive long periods of time with very little food and, minimal water, but it does start making changes to and a lot of you talk to people who do fasting, one of the biggest benefits is the mental clarity, right? And that's because the way your body uses fuel sources changes. Whether or not that's good for performance is a different conversation. I would probably lean towards no. But this is, in I guess, reduced sense, what you're doing when you're cutting weight for a fight. And so when you're doing that, your body literally thinks, I'm dying. There's limited resources. I need to slow the rate of that process. until I can get more resources and replenish.
Yeah.
And that's going to have a completely different impact on your system because mentally and physically your body thinks, okay, we're going out.
Yes.
And that's going to have an impact on how, and again, I think there are athletes that thrive in that for whatever reason. And then there's athletes that don't thrive in that.
Okay.
And then that really causes them to implode. And you see that when they get really depleted, they don't handle that very well.
Yeah.
But it's like your body needs fuel, right? Like your body, and just if you think of a body systems perspective, is that you have these systems that keep your heart pumping, that keep your muscles working, that keep your bone system, that keep your immune system. They all need fuel. They all need energy.
Yeah.
So when you start taking away that energy, your body then has to ration what you do have between the systems.
Yeah.
And so this is why you see all these problems, especially in fight camp or when people do longer, probably not longer fight camps, but more consistent fight camps after each other throughout a year. They're not giving these systems enough calories. And then you start seeing all these problems. They get bone stress fractures, they get injuries, their immune system goes down, they get sick a lot, they're temperamental, their mood, we know anxiety, depression, they rise because it's simply that you're not putting enough fuel or energy in this system for it to work properly.
Right.
So of course, some parts of it are going to break down.
Yeah.
Some females lose their cycle, guys, their libido goes away, testosterone, thyroid. There's all these markers we can test and we know it happens. And at the end of that weight cut, you're at the most extreme point of that. So your body is trying to just survive on what little it has, which some people can thrive in, most don't.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, I mean, it's scary, even though it's part of the sport for now, right? It doesn't need to be as drastic as we're saying. Recovery. What's the best way that nutrition can support a good recovery? After your the weigh-in, I know you have the supplements, but what after that? What's the best thing to do?
I think look at it on what your body has used and what it needs. So I think if you look at it overall from a basic caloric point of view, okay, so you've been training for a week and you've done lots of big sessions. Are you in a caloric gap? And if you're cutting weight, you probably need to be to lose the weight. Are you in an appropriate gap is probably more the conversation. So how do you replace those calories, number one? Okay. And then how do we make the most of those calories? And if you're cutting weight, you've got limited calories. So how do we make every calorie count? Yeah. We've just done, the 6:30 a.m. jiu-jitsu class, and then we did the Muay Thai class at night. Yeah. Good chance we're going to be glycogen depleted. We know it's a glycolytic sport. Yes. We know that we're going to burn lots of carbohydrates. Even if we're not going completely hard, we burn mostly carbohydrates at just 60% of our max, which is a lot lower than what most people think. Yeah. So you're burning a lot of carbohydrates throughout all your training. Yeah. So replacing that, if you've got to get up again the next morning and go to training or do your job, that's probably got to be your priority. Okay. Getting your fluids back in. Yeah. Again, we know hydration, and living in Bali, chronic dehydration is not good. No. So can we get our carbohydrates in? Can we get our fluids in? Yeah. If we're in that weight cut, we know that we're losing mass from our body. We want to get that mostly from fat, limit the amount from our muscle. Okay. The protein becomes really important for that. Yeah. And then something that most fighters don't consider, fat, very, very important for your hormonal health. And that's a big mistake a lot of fighters. And it makes sense if you logically look at that. And even in the sense of a total fight camp, I want to recover, I want to perform my best. Yeah. I need to get my carbohydrates in because it's important for training, and then recovery, getting the fuel source back in. Protein's really good for maintaining that muscle mass. But fat, it's an easy one. It's calorically dense. I can just take that away and that'll drop my calories and keep the fat coming off. But what that also does, that's the backbone for a lot of your hormones, say testosterone for guys. Okay. And so this is why you get these especially male athletes, and they go, I just feel really crap. Like I'm following the diet, I'm fueling before my training session, I'm getting my recovery nutrition in, I'm hydrating, I'm doing everything, I'm sleeping. I just feel crappy, my energy levels are down. And you go test them and their testosterone plummets, which is a consequence of, yes, the low calories, but it's also likely a consequence of the low fat as well. So getting good amounts of fat, not too much.
Good fat.
Good fat.
What would that be?
Good fats. It's not. I wouldn't say go to KFC and get a bucket of deep fried chicken.
Damn.
Yeah, don't do that. Everyone. I don't think it's rocket science, right? Like salmon, almond, avocado, those type of things are your healthy fats. Yeah. So if you can give it, but again, most fighters are on a calorie budget. Yes. So when you work that out and you go, okay, I need to prioritize carbs, I need the protein. You're going to be on the lower side of fats as it is. And even if you get a stall in your weight loss and you go, I need to drop the calories again, you're going to drop the protein and fats. So you are always at risk of, okay, are these fats going too low? That's why you've got to be really dialed in with your nutrition.
Got it. What's one piece of advice, or where would one start if they're really just starting to pay attention or starting to get to know their nutrition? Like that's a lot of great things that you said, and because I've gone through it just both, when I was like weightlifting, did my fight camp, even like fueling my body for high rocks or something like that, right? Been there, done that, but there are a lot of people that have never looked at their nutrition or their food or their intake in that way. So where do I start?
Carbs are probably the easiest one. Pretty much all those sports you mentioned are going to be carb dominant sports.
Yeah, there's a reason I chose them. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are certain sports where you could probably get away being lower carb.
Okay.
The majority of sports, carbs are going to be most important. And I think the biggest mistake I see is people going, oh, it's not that long of a session. It's not that big. I don't need to eat beforehand, which is fine if the rest of your diet is really good every other day and those glycogen reserves, those stored carbs in your body is up. But again, if you're looking at that person over here who's working a long day, like you're using 120 grams of stored carbs just on your brain a day. And then if you're getting up and moving around, you're working on a job site, you're burning through those stores. The number one thing I always say, if you just want to start, eat before your training session.
Okay, so no fasted training.
No fasted training.
Okay.
And people go, I want to burn. And we'll get into it. It doesn't actually make you burn more fat. It's just, but I think the fundamental principle is really important. It's just getting your body primed to do the activity you're about to do. And it gets you thinking about, okay, what does my body need at this point in time? Before I go to training, it probably needs fuel. I've probably spent 24 hours, hopefully, stocking up those reserves. I've got enough for my training, and then I can top up the gas tank, top up the blood sugars before I go in. That's going to help. Okay, what do I need straight after? The recovery nutrition, the carbs, the fluids, the protein. So it just starts like this in motion. What do I need in my body right now to best serve my performance and recovery? It's very simple. Just before, eat something.
Okay. And I think, too, there's a lot of information out there, but on your Instagram, and I know you say you don't do social much, but there's a lot of great information on the Fight Dietitian Instagram site. But then you also have, I guess, others in the TFD brand, right? The Combat Dietitian, et cetera. Yeah, Jack. And so, I think even just those little pieces or snippets of information starts to, it gives you a different lens to look at of the fuel that you're putting into your body, or what you're putting into your body, and understanding that is fuel for all your tasks, because the training isn't in isolation. The training is in addition to everything that you have bookended, right, of your day, right? Okay. What are your thoughts on any of the tech that's coming out? Is there anything that we should be looking at in terms of tech that would help?
Yes. It's going to be an interesting answer, though. I think probably the most overrated tech are wearables at this point.
Yes.
I don't think they're as good as what they say right now. I think they overestimate a lot of things. I think, what's the term? Andy Galpin uses the term orthomnia or something like that. Okay. There's orthorexia, where you're obsessed with eating healthy, where you're obsessed with being healthy. There's also the equivalent of being obsessed with your sleep patterns, which has come with the rise of Whoop.
Whoop. And Aura too, right?
Yeah, and Aura, right? I had heaps of clients in the past that would wake up in the middle of the night freaking out whether they're having a good night's sleep, and then check their wearables and then go, oh, I had a terrible night's sleep. And that's a real thing. Yeah, Andy termed it.
So counterintuitive.
Yeah, he had a really good term for it, I think, orthomnia or something like that, where you become obsessed with your sleep patterns to the point it becomes detrimental. But that is really applicable to any type of health, whether it's your exercise and you're wearing the heart rate strap, whether it's MyFitnessPal and you're tracking. All of them are useful tools, very, very useful tools if you know how to use them and you know how they fit in the bigger picture. And nutrition can be as complicated or as simple as you want it. And really, I find the big problem where everyone gets tripped up is they focus on the wrong things without understanding the most important things. We call it majoring in the minors instead of majoring in the majors. So if you can get all of your, just basic calorie, which is a tough question, how many calories do I need every day to fuel whatever my goal is? You think it's a very easy question. It's quite difficult.
How am I supposed to find that out? Am I supposed to ChatGPT that?
Good. You definitely could.
Obviously, the ideal would be to contact you guys, start working with you guys. But if I'm just curious, how much should I be getting? What's the best way to answer that?
2,500 calories. I don't know. It's funny. Me and Andy, who's probably the most prolific figure in performance science in the world, we sat across each other in a podcast and we both said, isn't it crazy that we do this with all of the elite athletes? We do this. We have access to labs all over the world. We can get any testing we want. And to find out the best amount of calories for you and me and anyone else who wants to do it is still the old school, okay, I need to just punch this into an equation, get a starting point. I need to test it out. Does my weight stay the same? Does it go up or does it go down? Okay. And no matter how many metabolic chambers you have, how much RMR testing you do, metabolic carts, that seems to be the most accurate, reliable, and efficient way to figure out how many calories you need. Okay. The problem then is just having someone guide you and go, okay, well, what's a good starting point? Right. Where do I even start? How does that look? Like, how do I get that in food? Okay. What does that look like for my day-to-day? That's where it gets really difficult. Getting the numbers isn't really that hard. You could get that off ChatGPT.
I was like, can we put up the equation on the screen during the podcast and somebody can figure that out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there's lots of equations. Like you can dwindle equations down to be super simple where you can just times a number by another number and get, but that's not the important part. It's what do you do with that? And then how do you make the adjustments? And then how do you get that number and turn it into real food and then put it into meals that work with your lifestyle and then work with your training? That's where it gets really difficult. It's not so much the numbers. Most things in nutrition, there's not a lot we don't know. Like fundamentally, especially when we look at performance nutrition, like I spoke about, there's those extreme situations where we're still figuring things out, but fundamental sports nutrition, we've got a really good grip on. That's not the issue. It's how do you take that from theory and put it into practice. That's the really, really difficult part.
And I will say from personal experience, after learning more about, about what I need and my caloric needs, macros at that time for the activities that I was doing at that time, it doesn't take much to start to understand and then again, see your food in a different lens, right? I feel like once you have that kind of baseline, then that education, that knowledge, it sticks with you forever. And you do start to see things, in a different light. Protein was never a big thing for me until I started realizing, okay, I need it for specific needs. Now, 10 years after learning that, I know, okay, I should be getting more protein. Like it's just those little tweaks in there that start to reframe your narrative and how you view food. Right. I encourage people. You can use the equation, but just to start to understand your caloric needs, and then, like you said, to make those steps and educate yourself in terms of, okay, now what do I do with this, right? Because it's a life changer. It's a game changer. Okay, so can we go back to the first question?
Oh yeah.
Did you forget about it? But you know what? There's a closing question. Before I ask that, how do you personally define discipline in nutrition, and has that evolved from when you first started?
Yeah, it definitely has evolved. Lots of things have evolved. I think as a practitioner, you should always be evolving your thought process. There's things that I thought were God's honest truth 5 years ago that I completely disagree with now. But I like to think I'm pretty flexible with my thinking. How do I define discipline? I think discipline with nutrition is probably freedom. I don't think being extremely disciplined with your intake is going to give you longevity with a good relationship with food. I think you gain that freedom by initial discipline and understanding the tools that you need and the guidance that you need to understand your body. And what everyone should be doing is understanding their system, the system of you, because everyone's going to be different. I could come in and that's essentially what my job is. It's not to run these numbers. It's not to get all these equations. It's to figure out what is the system that works best for your body for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And not everyone is trying to live to 120. Not everyone's trying to be a UFC champion. Not everyone's trying to get sub 10% body fat. Some people just want to feel good. They want to make better decisions. They want to know healthier meals to feed their family. So having that initial discipline gives you the freedom to be able to do that throughout your lifespan. And it's like any skill. It's like driving a car. How many of us now sit down and go through the process of this is the clutch, this is first gear, these are the indicators, this button does this. You never do that. But you had to. At some point, you had to do that very intensely. I mean, over here, we had to do that for 2 years super intensely. And now you never think about it. And you probably do it without even thinking every day. And that's the best way to think about your nutrition. I think nowadays there's so many 8-week challenges, there's so many 12-week challenges, there's so many short fixes, and they have a place for sure. But I always ask our clients, if you don't see yourself doing this, in 12 years' time, don't do it for 12 weeks. If you don't see yourself doing it in 80 years, don't do it for 8 weeks, because it's something you need to establish and build into your lifestyle over your life.
Yes.
That's how you get longevity and you get discipline with your nutrition, and that's how you achieve that freedom.
Awesome. Excellent advice. Excellent. On a personal note too, might need to cut this out or I might lose some some followers. It's like on social where you see a lot of people, here's what I eat, you know, in a day or in a week. And I'm kind of going, but that's you. And I think a lot of people, you know, they get confused by it, or they think, oh, okay, well, she does jujitsu too, so this is what I should be eating. But no, she lives in a completely different part of the world. She has a completely different lifestyle too. But yeah, she does roll, right? But that's not you, right? So yeah, there's so much noise out there.
I think on that point, it's important too, because I think when we live a healthy lifestyle, you're in like the performance space, you train and do it, like you become a victim of thinking that everyone thinks the way that you think.
Right.
And I think we have this problem of imparting those thoughts and those expectations onto other people. And we need to appreciate there's a whole group of people that really don't care. They don't care about they don't care about living to 100. They've got bigger problems. They're just worrying about paying the bills. They want to, you know, be there for their family. They want to have a good time. They want to go out on the weekends. And it's not really our place to change that with them. Unless they come to us directly and ask for that advice and they're seeking your help, it's not your role to change them, and you don't have to be that person to change them. I think that's where a lot of friction on social media and in this space happens, because people feel this has helped me so much and I believe in these things so much, everyone should be doing it. It's like, no, that's great for you. No one else cares.
Yeah.
Let them live their lives. If they want to get your opinion on it, they'll come ask.
Exactly.
Other than that, just keep it to yourself.
That should just be the mic drop right there. Okay, all right. I am gonna ask the starting question, and then we've got the last question. So do you want me to remind you the starting question?
Please.
Yes. I don't even remember. So when our listeners finish this episode, what's one thing that you hope they'll see differently about the fight, whether that's in the ring or in life?
I think nutrition is very synonymous with fighting, especially if you look at it in weight cutting, in that a lot of people, if you're not into fighting, you'll look at fighting and think, oh, this is a thug sport. They're just going in there, they're beating each other up. It's so violent, where anyone within fighting, that's the complete opposite. Yeah. The most gentle, beautiful, humble, respectful, disciplined humans I've ever met in my life are all fighters who could kill you with their bare hands and who would never even consider doing that. I think when it comes to nutrition, we often think that as well, is that there's this misconception that it's like very difficult. It's this overwhelming thing that it's like there's so much information that I could never wrap my head around it, where it's not like that. It's like nutrition is very simple. 95% of what you need to do, you probably already know. It's just doing it. Yeah. And I think that's what I love about fighting. I think fighting and nutrition work together so well, because these fighters, they go into that sport and and when they embrace that nutrition, I find that all these conversations that you can have, say, organic, seed oils, all these other things, the best fighters I've ever worked with, I think through their martial arts journey and through their nutrition journey, if they're getting 90% of those things right, they're probably not going out to see Mr. Miyagi to figure out this final death touch that they need on their game plan, in the same way they're not going out to eliminate all seed oils in their diet or find this real silly quick fix, because they realize if you're getting 90% of this right, you're probably not even going to worry about the 10%. And I've seen the best fighters in the world. And I've worked at one stage and I'm pound for pound 1, 2, and 3 best fighters in the world. No one else better. Other than those 3 people, they could probably all tango with each other. Yeah. None of them are 100% on their nutrition. 90% probably. Yeah. And those 3 should be worrying about that 10%, and they don't, because that's where life's meant to be lived, right? Like in that 10%. Yeah. And I think that's really as a consequence of their martial arts journey. Is like you're always trying to find, like, I've got to be better. But you appreciate 90% is still pretty good. Yes. Like you're probably never going to be 100% a complete martial artist. Yeah.
It's
90% is pretty good. Yeah. You're going to be very, very good.
Yeah.
And that's where probably the most elite best people sit. Yeah. And I think that's the exact same for your food.
Okay.
How's that for an answer?
That is a great, I'm like soundbite. All right. Final question. When you look back on your own journey in this field, what truth has your work revealed to you about yourself?
I think it kind of applies to all people who are in the martial arts space or just anything in sports. I always think, and I always talk to people, the best thing I love about sports and being involved with athletes is not so much the sport itself or what they're doing. Yeah. I think when you're around people who have this unbelievable belief in themselves, and I always talk about, for years they have this vision in their mind that is crystal clear to them that no one else believes, and they think they're crazy. And I look back at my journey, and I remember working in a sports clinic saying, I want to work just with fighters, and my superiors, my supervisor saying, that's crazy, you'll never do it. That's the dumbest idea. Just stick to the path, do this. And it's like, no, I know this can work. Yeah. And then being around like world champions who weren't world champions, and they said, I'm going to be the UFC world champion. Like, trust me, I can do it. I know I can do it. I think sports gives us that modality to believe in yourself, and to, even though everyone else might doubt you, and think that gives you a vessel to support what you already know. Like, I know I can be this person. You just need to believe in it. And I think that's the vessel that supports that belief and injects that belief. And I think whether it's martial arts, whether it's Ironman, ultramarathon, whatever sport it is, I think sport's such an amazing thing because it injects that self-belief. And I think that's why so many great people, especially in the martial arts community, whether or not they end up being a world champion, that's probably not their goal. But everyone goes through that process. And I think that's, for me anyway, like it's really taught me to back yourself and believe in yourself. And if you can see it, you can do it. And not everyone needs to be a UFC world champion. Not everyone needs to fly around in private jets and drive around Lamborghinis. But whatever that vision is you have on yourself, if you do the work, you show up every day, you put yourself in those right environments, it'll work out. And I think that's probably what I've taken from it.